It's time for the Kim Hammer Show, where you'll learn how your state government affects you, your family, and community. Here's Kim Hammer.
Good afternoon. Hope you're having a great Saturday, and we're glad that you're joining us on the Kim Hammer Show. We're going to get right into the show because both of my guests that are coming on are kind of busy, and we want to respect their time. And they've got a lot to talk about, a lot of things I think you'll be interested in. A lot of activity going on at the Capitol. We have just finished our fourth week in the session, and the pitch is picking up a little bit. And listen, let me tell you, if you are interested in coming to the Capitol to listen to any of the bills that are being presented, you do have access to the Capitol. Obviously, we have some safeguards in place in order to make sure that the members, as the public and the staff at the Capitol, stay safe. But it is really a pretty neat arrangement they've got worked out where when the bill is being presented in committee, the members and the staff are on there, the press is in there, and the essential people that are going to give testimony. But they have holding rooms that have full screen TV so that you can watch the debate going on in a holding room to space out individuals so as not to, be within the 6-foot distancing rule. And really the structure and the flow of things has been pretty impressive. And I want to commend the leadership of getting everything worked out before the session started. So if you are interested in coming and hearing a bill presented, do not be inhibited, but also remember that you can watch it live stream through the website, www.arcleg.ar. If you'll go up and get on that, you can click on the video section to any of the committee meetings that you have interest in and be able to watch the debate of all the bills being discussed. So it is totally accessible to the public, and we welcome the public input. All right, today, my first guest is Senator Alan Clark, longtime legislator, longtime friend. Alan, thank you for taking time out today to be on the Kim Hammer Show.
Thank you for having me.
You've got several bills that have run this week or in the process of running. A lot of discussion on the floor on some of them, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to just talk about them and people be better educated about some of the things that you're doing. Let's talk first of all, and if you will, give me the Senate bill number, if you will, and we can pull it up on the website, the one dealing with custody during a divorce case.
That is SB 18, to amend the law concerning child custody and visitation. And that creates the rebuttable presumption when you go to court that joint custody is in the best interest of the children, which means we start with joint custody as the beginning argument, and then either party can make an argument as to why it should not be joint custody. And I got involved with this bill because of the disparity, because of the system does not respect the value of fathers in children's lives, in my opinion, and the disparity between the roles and the disparity between the amount of time that mothers and fathers see their children.
Was there a particular case or situation that prompted you? Usually you have the history of whenever you get involved in a piece of legislation like this, it's because it's driven by a personal experience or somebody that's a constituent that has approached you.
This is just, Kim, it's just the sheer volume of cases. I have so many parents, dads, and grandmothers on a continual basis, that many are professionals, many are veterans, many are police officers. You could go on and on and on, that do not appear to be getting a fair shake. I think everyone says our younger judges, as culture has changed, our younger judges are doing a better job. But we need to change the law that just says joint custody, that recognizes the fact that fathers are as important in children's lives as their mothers are. And their mothers are extremely important, but so are fathers. And I've pointed out that, I had a young contractor friend in my store years ago, right after the Jonesboro shooting, school shooting. And he said to me that he hoped his two sons, who I think were 3 and 6 at the time, that they would never do anything like that. And I said, I don't believe they ever will. You can be sure of that. And he said, well, Alan, how can you be so confident? And I said, if you look at those cases, almost every one, not everyone, but almost every one before then and since then has not had an active father in those young men's lives. And we've got to recognize the importance of having both parents active in a child's life.
So how does it work out? Because some people would express concern that you are maybe creating the option for a parent who is not providing a safe environment for their child to be in. And that's one of the reasons why one parent above the other would be favored by the court as far as having custody of the child through that. How do you address it in your bill so as to make sure that the welfare of the child is not put at jeopardy or at risk?
Well, the bill just changes it to start that says, first of all, we started off with, in 2013, we passed a bill that said joint custody would be favored. And then the judges came out in their handbook and noted that we passed a law, the legislature passed a law in 2013 that said joint custody would be favored. However, they cited court cases that said that joint custody actually would not be favored. So although we had passed the law was being ignored. And so we came back and said, okay, how do we make it stronger, which is what we're doing, but still allow the judges to do whatever needs to be done. And that's what we're doing. If you've got, an abusive parent, if you've got, a parent that's got substance abuse problems, etc., those arguments can easily be made. Joint custody is not going to be the case every time, nor should it be the case every time. It's not the panacea. And there's cases that it doesn't matter what you do. If you've got a father and or a mother that are determined to use their children as weapons against the other, there's not a whole lot the system can do to change that. But it just establishes joint custody as the starting place, and then both parties can show cause that should not be the case in their particular arrangement.
I know sometimes, and tell me if the bill addresses this, and if you want to look up the bill, you can go to www.arcleg.state.ar.us. That's www.arcleg.state.ar.us. And when the screen pulls up, there'll be a place for you to insert and to search for the bill. Just type in there on the bill SB 18, and it'll pull up the bill as well as the other ones we're going to talk about today. So let me give you a scenario and tell me how your bill would address this, because we have a mutual constituent who approached me about this. Sometimes she was married to an individual that was wealthy, and when they got into the divorce settlement, or they got into the divorce process, he basically just outspent her because she didn't have the money to hire the lawyers and to fight all the different legalisms that go on in the courtroom, the legal play that goes on in the courtroom. And he basically was just able to outspend her, and therefore he ended up getting full custody of the kids. And it wasn't a matter of that the kids were in a bad environment, either side. It was just a matter of who had more money in the case of being able to fight during the divorce. Does your bill address that, or does it bring the playing field a little bit more level as far as those that don't have as much money as the other?
This, in her case, it certainly would have leveled the playing field a great deal. And that's one of the things that I talk to judges and lawyers about a lot, is that is one of the other calls I get, is the fact that people are losing in court simply because the other person has more resources. And that is something the judiciary themselves needs to work on, rather than forcing the legislature to try to come in and with the wisdom of Solomon and try to figure it out. But no, this, by making joint custody a rebuttable presumption, still can't take away the advantage of whatever money is there, but they're going to have to show that there is definitely a reason why she should not have joint custody. And now those who oppose the bill say we'll use just the opposite argument, that because it starts off with joint custody, that somebody who doesn't have money is going to have a hard time proving that the other party is not fit. We've got lawyers who say that that's not true, and hopefully we've got judges who can look at the evidence easily enough. We would hope that money wouldn't make that much difference with a good judge.
Okay. The term rebuttable presumption is mentioned in your bill, and you just said it a while ago. Just for those of us that maybe don't have the advanced knowledge you've got, define what that is and how it fits into it.
Rebuttable presumption, and again, Kim, I'm not a lawyer, so as we have these debates, I often am depending on lawyers to be there, but I'll do my best. A rebuttable presumption says this is the way that it will be without enough proof to show that it should not be. In fact, in page 1 of the bill, lines 28 through 30, if the court finds by clear and convincing evidence that joint custody is not in the best interest of the child. So it requires, with the rebuttable presumption, it requires clear and convincing evidence otherwise.
Which still leaves go ahead.
Which is above just a preponderance of the evidence. It's above just a 50%. You've got to show it can't be just a little rinky dink. Well, we don't think he or she, is a good parent, etc. But something like drug abuse or physical abuse that's been established, those things rise to that level.
But it still leaves the judge some latitude that in the event that a parent is being neglectful or all the things we don't want to think parents would be, it still gives the judge some latitude that once that evidence is introduced into the discussion, then the judge could go ahead and decide and say, this child really needs to be with this parent once that has been established.
Absolutely. It just forces them to start with joint custody, and that is in the best interest of most children if it's possible. And it's not always going to be possible. There's not always two fit parents. Situations don't always allow it. And there will be many, many cases, but we have way too many cases now where joint custody is ignored when we in fact do have two fit parents. And we will probably have lots of testimony in House committee from some of those fit parents who don't have custody and from grandparents, because this is not just a father issue. This is a family issue where one whole side of the family often does not see children. But more importantly, the children don't see the parent nor that side of the family.
So who would be in opposition to this? I mean, everything you're saying makes it sound like the sensible thing to do. What's the opposition?
Well, the judges have had opposition. They continued to, as we noted in their handbook, continued to ignore the law from 2013. And so we've had some opposition there, not necessarily strong opposition, but we've had some there that were unhappy with it. And we have some of our family custody lawyers, although we have many who support it. In fact, Jimmy Gasway, the House sponsor, who actually ran the bill 2 years ago in the House, is such a lawyer, and we have many lawyers on the other side. But that's where the opposition comes from.
I guess one thing you said kind of perked my interest is you would think that the handbooks that govern any entity would be in alignment with the laws that we pass. That could be a debate for another a subject for another debate, I guess. All right. What's your, well, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, after I presented this in the Judiciary Committee, they amended the handbook and then once I presented it on the floor, they've amended the handbook again. But yes, you would expect that. I think they're rather embarrassed about their handbook at this point.
Okay. All right. What's the next bill you want to talk about?
I presented in State Agency Committee last thing Thursday, right before we left, SB 188, which covers polling places and electioneering. It's a little bill that doesn't do much, as we say so often, but it's an extremely important bill. And it's mainly simply says that on election day or election days, if it's an early voting place, that a polling place will be a polling place and not private property, because we're running into more and more problems where polling places are not allowing people to put up signs, not allowing people to electioneer. And by the term electioneer, we mean to hold signs, to ask people to vote for their candidate or for their proposition or against someone else's, and to gather signatures for petitions. And grassroots politics is what this nation is based on, and that the average citizen can get involved and make a difference. And if you can't gather signatures on an election day at a precinct, I mean, obviously being outside the 100-foot, and our law spells out that you can't, electioneer with folks that are in line to vote, because it lines up completely with federal law. But what's happening now is we don't have uniformity, because some places allow signs, some places don't. But if somebody doesn't like a petition, and I don't like most of them, to be quite honest, but if somebody doesn't like a petition, they say, well, y'all can't gather signatures here. Well, that's the same as somebody saying, well, we're going to let Kim Hammer's opponent put up his signs, but not Kim Hammer. And which is exactly what someone can do if we're going to use the fact that it's private property. So this just says, if you're going to be a polling place on election day, it shall not be private property. You'll allow election type activities to go on.
Electioneering, tell people what that is, just so everybody has a good understanding of what that is.
Electioneering, again, is holding signs, waving signs, putting up signs, asking people to vote for your candidate, and also gathering signatures for petitions.
I know one of the things that has been a concern to some is that people are setting up within the 100-foot rule to, maybe give out bottled water, but they are actually affiliated with entities that may go for or against your grain, depending on what it is, but they are not actually they are not actually campaigning for a particular candidate per se, but what they represent and who they are as an organization may not align with some people's philosophies when it comes to who they want holding offices. Does this address that issue, or would that prohibit them from being within the 100-foot rule?
This does not address it, other than to address the 100-foot rule once again, which is already in law, because that being anything, if you're doing anything to do with electioneering within 100 foot, and certainly that would include handing out water, if you are taking a side, our election officials should already be handling that. That should be strictly against the law. It is strictly against the law. Actually, they should be controlling it and not allowing it to happen. But no, this bill does not address it, because already within 100 foot, you're not supposed to be doing anything like that. Although it does spell it out again in our bill. It's just because we're spelling out what's already in the law.
And for the benefit of those who may not know, the 100-foot rule is actually, as Alan mentioned, Senator Clark mentioned, is in the law, and it's intended to create a safe buffer so that when you walk up to the polling site, the polling center, or wherever it may be that you're going to vote, that you don't have to worry about being harassed or people getting in your space, sort of say. It's just a safety zone, and you'll notice in a lot of places, the election commission will go out and they will either do a chalk line or draw a paint line or something, and everybody is expected to stay outside of that 100 foot. Some people have figured out also, is that 100 foot of the primary entrance into the polling site, or is that 100 foot within the building? Those are some discussions we're having to bring some clearer definition to what that is, because the last thing we want to have is people feeling intimidated when they go to vote by either party or by any entity that's in there or there to try to persuade you or sway you through the use of pressure. Anything else?
If it's not, if it's not already clear, my bill does spell out that it's within 100 foot of the primary exterior entrance used by voters to a building. So if it's not already clear in the law, this will make it clear in the law that within 100 foot, you don't do anything of the entrance to the building. You don't do anything.
Right. And one thing, constituents need to realize is that we make a law, and some people will actually use that law to their advantage, and we are always in the position of having to come back in order to maintain the integrity of what's intended in the election process. There are several bills that have already dropped that are in the pipeline dealing with some election issues. I know there's some others that are coming that are going to try to make sure that we don't turn out to be a Georgia state or another part of the country that, had some issues. We're going to try to learn from the mistakes of others to safeguard our election process here in the state. Anything else on that bill you want to talk about, Al?
No, I think that pretty much covers it.
Okay. Hey, there was one other question I wanted to ask you. So what about churches that are going to be polling sites? How does this affect them with the separation of church and state? And if a church opens itself up to be an election center, how is this bill going to have bearing on them?
If you're a church on election day, you will be a polling place, not private property. And so if there's issues, as with any other property owner, if there's issues that you don't want people putting up signs or not putting up signs, don't be a polling place. Because we've got, both are extremely important. Religious freedom is very important, but as we learned in this last election, voting is sacred, and we've got to allow people to do the things that people do on election day. And especially, what I didn't mention is if, establishment candidates, people who have lots of money, even those of us that are incumbents like yourself and myself, have an advantage. Grassroots candidates who I was when I first ran, and people gathering signatures, etc. If they can't have people waving signs and gathering signatures, etc., then you leave everything to the people with money. And so this is extremely important to the very fabric of what we believe about that all of us can affect elections in this country.
And, at the end of the day, if you've got the better proposal and you've got the what's best for the security of the nation and, leads us where we should want to be going as a nation, rally the troops and do a better job at marketing and getting it done. And this is what provides you the opportunity to make sure you got that. All right, we're going to have to take a break here in a couple of minutes, but what's the next bill you want to talk about?
SJR 2, a constitutional amendment to allow the General Assembly to convene an extraordinary that's what it says, an extraordinarily session upon the request of a majority of the members of each house. That's to put in a constitutional amendment on the ballot that will allow the legislature to call ourselves into session.
And just so people know the difference, he's identified Senate Bill SB 188. And again, if you want to go up and look these up on the website, go to www.arleg.state.ar.us. You can go up to the KimHammerShow.com website, and Elizabeth, you're listening, please make sure this gets put up there. You can go up there to the website and you'll find this address, www.arleg.state.ar.us. When it pulls up, just scroll down to where it says bill and type in the bill number, and it'll pull up and you can read all about it. We've been talking about Senate bills, which are actually bills that are introduced by a senator, just like HB is introduced by a House member. But with regards to this one, it's SJR, which stands for Senate Joint Resolution 2, correct? And
Correct.
so this is, explain what that is so people have an understanding about what a SJR is and how it's different from a SB bill.
A Senate Joint Resolution where an SB, a Senate bill, becomes law. A Senate Joint Resolution becomes, of course, we can't have just resolutions where we just state our opinion, but the SJR 1, 2, and 3s that have a number, the Senate Joint Resolutions are about constitutional amendments where the legislature, the Senate and the House, can choose up to 3 to put on the ballot every 2 years for the people to vote on. And so that's what the Senate Joint Resolutions are.
All right, tell you what, we're going to take a break, and if you can hang on for a few minutes, Alan, after the break, we'll come back and talk about SJR2 again. If you want to look at it while we're taking a break, you can go to www.arcleg.state.ar.us, and up there where it says bill, block, or search for, just type in that. And if you want to go up to the website and follow me on my website, it's the KimHammerShow.com website. We try to keep current and informative information up there. And so we encourage you to follow and like that if you would, as well as the Facebook. We'll be right back on the Kim Hammer Show in a couple minutes.
Take The Answer with you anywhere with 11fmtheanswer.com. Tune in, iHeart, or radio.com. Breaking news and stimulating talk. 101.1 FM. The Answer.
It's no secret that we live in a broken world. When we come to the realization that we're sinners in need of mercy and hope, our emerging faith leads us to seek salvation that only comes through Christ. In response to the hope and joy that comes with salvation, we seek to be the good and live lives that glorify God. If you want to know more about the hope and joy found in Christ, we invite you to visit us at Winsong. We're located at 3 Winsong Drive off of Interstate 430 near the Maumelle exit.
This week in the Town Hall Review with Hugh Hewitt, brought to you in partnership with the Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy. The vaccine rollout is underway.
Best case scenario, end of April to get through all the people who are higher priority, the elderly or one comorbidity, people who have one or more health factors that put them in that higher risk category. It's going really, really slowly. It's really infuriating.
And there are a few snags.
There's a big percentage of Americans who don't want to get it.
Later, can Donald Trump use the impeachment trial to his advantage?
This is his chance. This is his chance to get it out there.
And Republicans deal with a troublesome House member.
She's a kook. There's no doubt about that.
Join us for our program. Sign up for our podcast at townhallreview.com.
Town Hall Review with Hugh Hewitt, Saturdays at 7 a.m. on 101.1 FM. The Answer.
On the next Steve Ellswick Show, it'll be a Monday, and the Power Panel will be here. I'm sure we'll talk more about Stand Your Ground and some other things. We'll talk about special elections, but are really just there to pass tax increases. And then get ready for Buddy Campbell. He's going to talk about local movies being made here in Arkansas on the next Dave Ellswick Show.
The next Dave Ellswick classic movie is a story of love, betrayal, and redemption.
I think now I shall play a call on Yvonne. Maybe get on the rebound, huh?
Well, when it comes to women, you're a true Democrat.
From 1942.
It's December 1941 in Casablanca. What time is it in New York?
Casablanca.
Of all the gin joints in all the towns in all the world.
Starring Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman.
I was informed you were the most beautiful woman ever to visit Casablanca. That was a gross understatement.
Casablanca shows one time only, Tuesday, February 9th, 7 p.m. at the Riverdale 10 VIP Cinema.
Play it, Sam.
You must remember this. In Casablanca in December 1941, a cynical American expatriate encounters a former lover with unforeseen complications. Get your tickets now at Riverdale10.com. Casablanca, Tuesday, February 9th at Riverdale 10 from Dave Ellswick and 101.1 FM The Answer.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
For all of you that are watching Facebook Live, we're glad that you're joining us. We've got State Senator Alan Clark on talking about a couple pieces of his legislation that he's running. and we are on SJR, Senate Joint Resolution number 2. If you pull that up on the website that you can go to, which is www.arcleg.state.ar.us, you can pull it up, and it's an amendment to the Arkansas Constitution to allow the General Assembly to convene in an extraordinary session upon the request of a majority of the members of each house of the General Assembly, and to provide certain circumstances in which the General Assembly may extend an extraordinary session called at the request of the General Assembly. All right, Alan, what's it all about?
This amends Article 5 of the Arkansas State Constitution, and it spells out on line 23, page 2, I guess, that that the way that the session would be called is a petition to the governor with the signatures of at least a majority, so 18 senators and at least 51 House members. And you'll have to spell out what the session would be for, just like when the governor calls one. And those are the only things you could meet on, unless you had 2/3 vote of members of both houses, just like we do today. And I believe it shows that we would not be in session for over 15 days unless we meet during a time that the governor has declared a disaster emergency, in which case if the members of majority of both houses vote, we can remain in session as long as the disaster emergency is in session, and can enact legislation during that time to mitigate the disaster emergency.
All of this is driven out of what?
Finding out this past year, actually, a lot of us were told and believed that we could already call ourselves into session, and found out that we could not, and found out under emergency powers that everything was coming out of one branch, just the executive branch. But outside of emergencies, the legislature ought to be able, if you've got 51 House members and 18 Senate members that believe we ought to come into session to deal with an issue, the legislature ought to be able to call itself into session, as can many across the country. And many did during this pandemic. And Arkansas certainly needs to have that in its law, in its constitution.
Yeah, and I would say this last year's taught us a lot of valuable lessons, none that we maybe thought we would ever be having dialogue about, but through the and something positive comes out of everything, even the pandemic. I think it has been a good wake-up call for everybody to take a look at our legislation and what we're allowed to do and not do. And as you mentioned, it became apparently aware to us that we as a legislative branch currently are not able to call ourselves into session in order to be able to take up matters, that if it rises to the level that 51% of the House and the Senate feel that it's something that deserves our ability to come in, as it's currently written, we are prohibited from doing that. Is this going to allow us, because I think it's New York, that they actually just stay in session indefinitely. Is this written to allow that, or with that 15-day clause in it, it would cease at the end of 15 days?
No, it would not be not like New York. It would end at 15 days maximum, unless we were in an emergency. And if we're in a government-called emergency, if a majority of the Senate and House voted to stay in session, we would stay in session for the duration of the emergency.
To deal only with matters relevant to the declared emergency, or to open up for
correct.
Other things?
Only for matters relative to the emergency, because, of course, you could call yourself into session for something else. But it says if you're going to stay in session because of an emergency, then the matters you deal with are about the emergency.
Some people would be concerned that we're creating a full-time legislature by doing something like this. So only under the cases of an emergency would the legislature, and that doesn't mean that we've got to meet during that time. It just keeps the foot in the door to where we could meet as we felt that we would need to. Is that right?
Correct. And of course, hopefully we're not going to be in an emergency forever, God forbid, because that part of it only exists if there's if the executive branch is called the disaster emergency. Otherwise, 15 days is the limit, period.
Well, one thing we're finding out through this, the governor has under his executive ability to, to declare that emergency. We've got our bill. Representative Gasway and I have been working long and hard and trying to be good actors with the governor's branch, and I will give him and his staff credit that they have been very cooperative. Our final draft is coming out this week. So if this goes through, which explain to the people, we only get to refer out as the legislative branch 3 constitutional amendments. So, and I'm sorry, I haven't kept up with it. Is this only the second one that's out there that you're aware of, or how many other ones are hanging out there? Do you know?
I don't know how many are on the House side. There are 3 on the Senate side, and they're all mine, which I was surprised to see that there were no others. The deadline is Wednesday, February 10th, and so I think we will see several others come out Monday, Tuesday, and especially Wednesday, which I believe is the 10th.
Okay. And then the House has their version, which could be the same or different. We just have to, work through it.
Right.
Okay. All right. Anything else on that one that you want to share?
I think that pretty much covers it.
Okay. Got a few minutes. Let me give you one last one, and then we're going to bring John Vincent on. In fact, for those of you that are listening that didn't see on my Facebook post, we got John Vincent, who is with the Arkansas Pharmacists Association, is going to be on. As I mentioned last week, and we're going to have him on for the next 3 or 4 weeks while the vaccines are being given to give us an update about the vaccination process here in Arkansas, where we are, and just talk about that. So he'll be joining us here in the next 3 or 4 minutes. You want to hang on. But Alan, give you one more bill that you want to highlight that you got special interest in.
Well, I've got so many, Kim, but SB 19, I guess, authorizes, it's a companion bill to Julie Mayberry's bill, and I don't know the number of hers. But mine's to authorize the presence of a support person for a patient in a hospital or physician's office. Mine's much narrower and shorter, as mine tend to be. Hers is much more comprehensive. But dealing with the fact that a patient has the right to have an advocate in the hospital is mainly what SB 19 is about.
So what exactly is different about, because I had Julie on a few weeks ago, so what's the difference between yours and hers?
Mine deals with hospitals and doctors' offices only, and is just been a very narrow scope. Hers is extremely comprehensive, probably in many ways a better bill, but sometimes just simple and straightforward. This just says you have the right to having an advocate, period. Mine doesn't deal with nursing homes or other places, just hospitals.
Okay.
And doctors' offices, but hospitals is really the main focus.
Okay. Yeah, and I know y'all are working together to try to, get, not that y'all are at odds with each other by any stretch of the imagination, but get harmony to get something through. Because, and I'll give you another real life experience. I told you all this last week, but this morning I go every Saturday morning with a friend to visit a church member that's in the nursing home, and it was really this was a kind of a sad morning today because she was just really down, and you could tell that all she really wanted, I think, was just that human embrace, that human touch that was being separated by glass in a screen window. And hopefully this week we'll see some movement in an area, because it is. It's emotionally distressing to everybody. It's to the staff, it's to the patient, it's to the family. Hopefully, as more vaccines are given and we get more protection and guard, we can expedite getting people joined back together. But yeah, when you're in the hospital and you aren't able to ask questions, maybe because you're under influence or whatever the case may be, having an advocate on your side is critically important. All right, anything else you want to say about that one?
No. I know you've got other people to talk to, but because like I said, I could talk to you about my bills all afternoon.
Well, you hang on, because if John runs out of soap, I'll let you get one more in there. But if you want to hang on, that'd be great. But if not, I appreciate Alan Clark, State Senator Alan Clark, being on the Kim Hammer Show, talking about some of the key legislation that he's invested in and driving through. Again, if you want to check that out, you can even look him up on the site I gave you by his name. You can look up all the legislators by their name, and you can see the legislation that they have followed. Going to www.arcleg.state.ar.us. The one thing I would like the listening audience and constituents to know is this: passing legislation is a process. Bills get filed in one form, but the negotiations with everybody that has a vested interest in that occurs along the process. There are some things that we are willing to modify in our bill because people bring up good points. And then there are other things that we feel representing our constituents, we just dig in. And so just as you see bills that are filed, one thing we need to do, or we would ask you to do, is just to keep an open mind, because sometimes when a bill is filed, people will start putting stuff out on Facebook. They'll start lighting up the world on the basis of the way that bill is drafted. And in some cases, it may just be a placeholder because we're under deadlines to get certain things in, like scope of practice, or like Alan mentioned a while ago with the constitutional amendments. And we've got to have some, or retirement bills. We've got to have certain things filed by certain dates, and then you can amend it as it goes along. But it is always a work in process. So, you know, what it may start off as and how it finishes may be just part of the process to arrive at what we hope is the best for the citizens of Arkansas. All right. I'm going to go to, at this time, John Vincent with the Arkansas Pharmacists Association. John, thank you for taking time out on Saturday afternoon to be on the Kim Hammer Show and kind of update us on where we are with the vaccine distribution in the state of Arkansas.
Good afternoon, Kim. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Well, let's start off, first of all, with the numbers. How many vaccines have come into the state? How many have we actually given, and how many are to be given?
So let's start with the rankings just real quick. On the CDC data and the New York Times that people are following online nationally, Arkansas continues to rank in the top 15. In fact, today we're ranked number 12 in the country in first doses administered. So that's a big change from where we were a few weeks ago with the collaboration, that public-private partnership between both local community pharmacies, some of the chain pharmacies, and also hospitals. We're doing quite well. The latest numbers of vaccines that have come into the state, I'm pulling that up now so I can give you the latest numbers. A total of 605,250 doses have come in the state. And at the state allocation, that's about 555,000 doses, and 63.2% of those have been administered. Just yesterday, there were 21,964 administered across all 75 counties, and that is outpacing the doses that we're receiving by quite a bit. So we continue to pick up speed, and we have a very broad network of vaccinators that are really busy out there in the field.
Alan, are you still online? Okay.
I am.
Okay. Feel free to chime in if you want to. We'll make this a three-way conversation. So as far as the, all right, so 605,250 have come in the state, and we have actually administered of that, how many?
300, and when you combine both the federal program through CVS Walgreens and the state, 370,262. One thing for your listeners, you may say, well, where's the other 235,000 doses? Well, most of those, and the health department is still working on this transparency to make it clear on how many of those are really unused vaccines versus how many of those are on purpose unused because they come in a few days to a week to up to 2 weeks in rare cases in advance of the second dose that is due. So a big chunk of those, the vast majority, over 90% of the unused doses are booster shots of which patients have scheduled appointments next week to receive.
Are we, and you, the 63.2% that you mentioned a while ago, define that, what that number represents again?
That number represents of the state allocation of the 555,850 that have been received as of 6:10 p.m. last night. 351,485 or 63.2% of the state allocations doses have been used. In the federal side, there's 49,400 through CVS and Walgreens, and they've only achieved a 38% burn rate or utilization rate of their 49,400. And the biggest reason why they've not been able to achieve a higher percentage is because the federal government allotted them too many vaccines early on. They received all of the vaccines they needed to make 3 separate trips to all the licensed long-term care facilities, and they've already completed their first round, and they're now going in back to do their booster shots for all of the residents and staff in those nursing homes and the assisted living facilities, and also in some cases residential care facilities. They'll make at least 3 trips to complete dose 2 and also to vaccinate anybody on that second round that didn't get it the first round. Maybe they had COVID, maybe they weren't quite ready, maybe they were off work that day. They'll pick up another patient, and they had about combined 120 homes. There are 415 of those long-term care facilities that are licensed in Arkansas. And I know the Arkansas Healthcare Association this week released a big press release yesterday where all 415 licensed long-term care facilities have received access to their first dose as of February 1st, 2021. So that's some good news to celebrate this week.
Let me ask you, with regards to those long-term care facilities that you referenced, but not all employees are getting the shots within those facilities. Is that
right? We still have some work to do in that area. In some facilities, more than 90% of the staff have been vaccinated. In others, that rate is lower, maybe because of vaccine hesitancy or they need more education. And one of the areas where Rachel Bunch and the Arkansas Healthcare Association, John Benson, the Arkansas Farm Association, we will work with our members over the next 30 days to work with the health department, with the local medical directors, and to try for any homes that are having a higher rate of hesitancy in their staff to provide the education they need to make a good decision. So I don't have granularity today to be able to say which homes have a greater than 90% in their staff and which are below that, but I can say that our goal would be for every single one of those facilities for their staff to have at least a 70% or greater vaccination rate, because that is believed somewhere in that 70 to 80% range to provide full what they would call immunity from an outbreak from occurring. So we'll be working on that over the next month in order to bring up any homes that may have staff that aren't at the high level, or at least provide them the education, right? I'm not a favor of the government mandating you have to get a vaccine personally, but I am in favor of providing education so that they can make good decisions.
Okay. Alan, chime in if you have any questions about it. The 605,250 that you mentioned a while ago, is that a combination of the first dose and the second dose, or is that strictly just the first dose?
It's both. It's both first doses and second doses. And like I mentioned a minute ago, the state is working on greater transparency by themselves in a vacuum, and you don't know what percent are scheduled boosters and what are our first doses. It's hard to see the good story of the work we're doing.
Yeah, and it wouldn't seem that hard to me, but we'll work on that this week to get that information narrowed down, because it does reflect a truer picture. If we're a state that's a population of 3 million, and of that 605,000 number mentioned a while ago, it only translates into 300,000 first doses, then, one of the things that people are anxious about is, when will I be able to get my shot and how far out is it? And I was listening to a story coming in, they're talking about maybe, up in May before the most vulnerable populations actually get all of theirs. What is in your opinion, what is the reason for the delay, or why are we not able to be getting it done quicker than what we are?
So I do have an estimate of the total doses given so far of the 300,000 that I talked about a minute ago. I'll answer your question, but I want to share a statistic. So of the 370,262 that are given, a rough estimate of how many of those are boosters versus completed first doses, about 270,000 are Kansans. So about 100,000 are booster doses and 270,000 are first doses. So we've vaccinated about 9% of all of the residents of Arkansas. So one of the things about getting to, 50%, 60, 70% of our population is that right now we don't have a vaccine that's approved for the pediatric population. So one of the nice things, if there is a nice thing or a silver lining, is that it's rare for the disease to be life-threatening and severe in kids. So that's a good thing in terms of not having a vaccine yet approved for those patients under age 16 years of age. There are studies that are ongoing for that population. But back to the root of your question, why is it going to take so long? The reason it's taken so long right now is a lack of supply. We need better manufacturing processes at the federal level for both Moderna and Pfizer for them to be able to ramp up their manufacturing. We had good news last week when Moderna was able to produce 30% more, and our state was able to get 30% more for Moderna, but we've not had an increase in Pfizer. So when you combine the two, that's about a 16% increase, or about 6,000 more doses per week in Arkansas. But in the big picture, 6,000 doses in a state of 3 million is a drop in the bucket. We need an increase of 50,000 doses, of 75,000 doses, of 100,000 doses per week in our state to really ramp this thing up. One piece of good news this week, Johnson & Johnson, one of the manufacturers of a competing vaccine or a third vaccine that might help us in those efforts, Kim, is they did apply to the FDA this week for consideration for approval. And previously for Moderna and Pfizer, when they submitted their applications, Pfizer's was reviewed and approved within 3 weeks. Moderna was reviewed and approved within 2 weeks. So we're probably by the end of February, we'll have a third vaccine available, which is a 1-dose series, and it doesn't require a booster, which is really good news for bringing a greater percentage of our population to a vaccinated state in the near future. So I'm looking forward to some good news hopefully by March. Of course, I don't want to get the cart before the horse. We've yet to see their safety data and their efficacy data, the full results of their clinical trials. So I'll reserve judgment until the FDA has a chance to review that. But if the news is good, it could result in us moving quicker and getting our population vaccinated.
All right. I'm down to like a minute and a half. Alan, you got anything you want to throw in on the conversation?
No, been listening with interest, but I don't have anything to add.
All right. Very good. John, any final words you want to give?
Yeah, the only other thing I would add is that they're working on transparency on how the different counties are doing, and the cities and the populations that'll be coming in the future. I know there's a range right now of 5% to 14% of the population of a county. Cleveland County, which is where Rising is, had the highest rate earlier this week, and Rising, and so that's really cool to have access in a rural area like that. I know that one of the pharmacy owners down there actually drove over to Sparkman in Dallas County and was able to vaccinate 100 people in an area where there was no hospital and no pharmacy. So these small businesses, small local providers are very nimble, and they're the backbone of our local economies, and they're making a difference out there.
Yeah, I saw the video you sent me about real quick in 15, 20 seconds. What was that video? It was emphasizing the success of the pharmacies being able to get it out.
Yeah, there's a story in the Washington Post about that yesterday about independent pharmacies outperforming chains. There was a video in Conway where they vaccinated 600 teachers yesterday. And then this next week, they're going to have events over in Forest City and West Memphis to take care of a lot of residents. 10
seconds less. Send me that video. I'll get it up on my website, thekimhammershow.com. You can go up there. Thank you for listening to The Kim Hammer Show. See you again next Saturday with some other legislators and John back on. Have a great Saturday.
101.1 FM, The Answer. KDXE FM, Kamak Village, Little Rock. A Salem Media Group station. 101.1 FM, The Answer.